housekeeping things first. We're not expecting a fire drill this afternoon, so if the alarm doesn't go off, it's a real thing. Please make your way out of those doors through reception into King Square, and we'll assemble there. Toilets are in reception if you should you need them, and please look over on the table over there should you need it as well. So this meeting is a hybrid meeting, and that means that committee members are present in Bridgewater House, and the meeting is also available online via Teams. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. Can I remind all of you in the room to please turn your mobile phones off or to silent, and can those joining us online please turn off your cameras and microphones so that the meeting is not disturbed. I will now introduce those taking part in the committee today. To my left are the officers from our legal and democratic teams, and to my right are the planning officers who will present the applications. On the wings of the table are the councillors who will debate and decide the applications. The format will be as per the published agenda, and a copy of the officer reports can be found on the council website. Each application will be taken in turn. Officers will outline each application, followed by public speaking time. Only members of the public who have registered to speak can make representation. Councillors around the table will then debate and decide on each application. During the debate, there will be a proposer and a seconder for a resolution. Members will vote on the proposal, and only members who have been present throughout the whole application will be able to vote. The voting options are for, against, abstain or defer. Votes will be counted and the results announced. So that takes us on to the main committee agenda. So first, are there any apologies for absence? And I think we're all here, aren't we? Yeah, Chair. Thank you. Minutes from the previous meeting, from the meeting held on Tuesday, 13th of February. Are they agreed as a correct record? And I have a proposer and seconder. Thank you. All in favour, all agree? Yeah, thank you. Now we go on to item number 3, declarations of interest. Ms. Lemon, would you like to take us through the declarations of interest?
Thank you, Chair. Does any members have any declarations of interest? Bob Filmer.
Thank you. The applications on both pages 21 and 49 fall within my division, but I've taken no part in the discussion at the council level. I'm a member of the local drainage board, but have taken no part in their discussions on these applications either. And I've been advised just to report that I did speak against an application on the first page 21 site at a previous meeting, but I'm going to come to this meeting with an open-minded list of debate and make a decision today.
So just to confirm, Councillor Filmer, you spoke on the outline commission, and this is a reserved matters application, and you're keeping an open mind.
Yeah.
Listening to all the merits of the argument before casting a vote.
I'm going to put that back myself.
Councillor Grimes.
Thank you. Yes, pages 21, 20 and 49. It's in my division, but I've taken no part in any discussions on this. Thank you.
And Councillor Henry.
Member of the ADB, the same as Councillor Fulmer, but I've had no discussion, so no conversations with anybody.
Thank you. And Councillor Bruce.
You need to press switch it on at the side.
Apologies. Yeah, drainage board as well, but I'm Parrot, and I'm not sure that that applies to either of these.
I don't think it does. We've already had discussion, so that's fine, Councillor Bruce. So no declaration. You are a member of the Parrot board. So well, members of the gallery, you've heard that members have made some declarations. Some members are dual-hatted members, so they are members of East Brent Parish Council and also of the Internal Drainage Board, where they say both these boards and councils will have been consulted on this application before this matter comes to the committee. What members are saying is they've taken no part in the consultation process, so they're coming to the meeting with an open mind, so they will listen to all the merits of the argument before casting their vote, which they're perfectly entitled to do so. I think that's all of it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 4 is public question time. Members of the public are registered to speak, and I'll call you to the table when we're considering the application. Now that does bring us on to the first application, agenda item 5 on page 21, and this is for land for the north of Old Bristol Road, East Brent. Mr. Noon, would you like to take us through the application, please?
Thank you. Just getting the slideshow to start. Yes, thank you. This is an application for the approval of the reserve matters of the original outline permission. That outline permission agreed the means of access to this site, leaving appearance, landscaping, layout and scale to be determined at this reserve matters stage. The application was for up to 40 dwellings, and the proposal before us now is for 40 dwellings, with the details to now be agreed. So here is the site, just with a pin dropped on it there, eastern end of Old Bristol Road, north side of that. You can see just for the A38 curving away up towards Bristol Airport, what have you, and the M5 running north-south just to the east of the site. So zoomed in more detail, it's a single large field. The application site excludes this area, it'll come up on the red line plan in a minute, but just the area of the eastern side of the site, just if this person can drop on things. It just, in this area here, it isn't part of the application site, it's in irregular shape. But it is just currently laid to rough grass, hasn't really been grazed for a while. I've got a number of photographs over the years just to show you how the site has changed. There is the application site, very irregular shaped. The development is on the sort of western part of the site. The thin lawn on the northeast side, that is part of the drainage works that are proposed. So going back to the outline application, this was the indicative master plan that was looked at, showing point of access of vehicular access of Bristol Road roughly in the middle of the site, south side, and then a pedestrian access on the just sort of over to the left-hand side of the front of the site frontage, which then linked to a footpath that is to be provided as part of that outline application along the northern side of Old Bristol Road, from the sort of southwest corner of the site through to where it picks up. There's existing, I think there's a sort of links up with your better footpath provision a bit further to the east. That was a matter of deep contention at outline stage. That has now been agreed as part of the inspector's decision. The original outline went to appeal, the appeal was allowed, and the inspector has accepted that this can be provided. So that is all set in stone, as it were, through the grant of outline planning permission. What the outline failed to do was link the site, edged in blue on this drawing, to the actual highway. And as a result, a standalone application for an access shown in the red lines here. So the larger red line for the vehicular access, the smaller red line for the pedestrian access. That was approved by standalone permission a couple of years ago. That came to committee and was approved, just to tie it all together. And that very much followed what was shown at or indicated at outline stage. There's the detail of that approved access. We have the right here. So we have the pedestrian and the vehicular access shown in these drawings here. These were approved as I say, that standalone application, and this what we now have with the reserve matters, which feed off these approved accesses. What we also had an application for a year or two ago was for a temporary access to serve the construction phase. One of the big issues that was much debated at the outline stage was the use of Old Bristol Road for the construction phase. Now, at that time, that created a lot of concern locally, particularly because at that stage, they were suggesting raising the levels considerably. That levels raising has gone. They've re-engineered things, and I'll come to that in the technical drawings, but they're now working off lower floor levels than they were originally envisaged. Still at the finished floor level that would meet the Environment Agency's concerns about flood risk, but it avoids that importation of soil and spoil base to raise the levels. So that would be served just merely for the duration of the construction phase, apologies. And that would then be removed afterwards. That is now, that temporary access is in place, ready to be used. So now moving on to the master plan for the site. This is the site layout as now proposed. So you can see the 40 houses raised, I suppose 2 clusters really, one either side of a central road running through the middle, where there will be open space. There is over here, there is a little area of local player lap in here, and there is a leap, which is sort of, more, we've got better equipment on it for older children. I've got some detail coming up on that. And then to the north of the site, we've got the attenuation pond, sort of blue area, you can see the little blue pond there. That then discharges into that long, thin swale. And then that then discharges into the Brooksville Green on the very eastern end of that little long arm. So that does involve a pump solution. That is the price we've had to pay for the ground levels lowering. If the ground levels were higher, it would be a gravity drain system. But that is a compromise of reducing the levels. And in the top left-hand corner, there's a pumping station for the foul sewage. So go to the next slide. So some indicative, these levels, I do say indicative here, they are sort of shown, they're not the, wouldn't form, they don't show the absolute detail of the levels and whatnot, but these do give you an indication of how the development would look as a whole. We would be looking to the individual house drawings for the detail of the approval and the engineering drawings for the levels. But this shows you what they're aiming for. So plot 1 is looking at across the frontage, the adjoining house outlined in grey on the left-hand side, and then the new houses, across to the point of access, and then on the other side, and then bottom right C is the row of houses that would face that area of locally equipped play in the bottom southeast corner of the site. And then this one is looking across the northern part of the site, so looking at B of that plan in the bottom corner. So again, sort of those house types running across the northern side of the site, looking out over sort of basic agricultural land. This one here is the affordable housing indicated here. We have shared ownership and affordable rent in blue, and the shared ownership orangey colour. So we have sort of 2 clusters there in the bottom corner. The majority of them in the bottom corner, then a few dotted out, looking out over the central area of open space. Those are, I'll come back to that in a little while in terms of the affordable housing need, but those are the 16 units that are 40% of the outline 40. Materials, of course, a certain amount of local concern have been adjusted during the course of the application. I think the grey dots are the grey roof tiles, which I think there was a local concern today. The grey roof tiles are not characteristic of this part of the development elsewhere along Old Bristol Road. They are much reduced. They're still there. You can see them across the frontage and sort of a couple of sort of feature plots. But the majority are brown roof tiles, which reflects sort of the majority of the roof tiles elsewhere. The house next door has got a grey tile roof, grey slate roof, so not wholly out of keeping. And then otherwise it's predominantly render with some brick houses. And then the blue bits are just sort of the feature bits of sort of gables done in stone. Again, sort of not wholly uncharacteristic of this area, but predominantly render and brown roof tiles. Just the story heights plan, just to confirm, all the houses are 2-storey, and then they have some little rear extensions and garages at a single story. Well, moving on to the drainage, just to give you a sort of view of what we've got there at the moment. Brooksville Green across the frontage, that is a maintained green. the IDB, look after that. And then the green, the water course running along the west and the north sides is a sort of maintained one by the relevant landowners. That I'll come back to that in a little while. But the IDB's area of control is across the frontage. This is an overview of the drainage scheme. So the blue lines on the plan are picking up all the surface water and basically under the surface water from the roads. It's all picked up in a series of pipes under the roads. It then discharges to the attenuation pond to the northeast. That is then discharges via that pump solution into the swale that runs along that northeast side of the site, and then discharges in Broxville Reen, which flows anti-clockwise around the site. And that is all at agreed rates. All the capacities and all the technical detail being looked at by the LLFA, and they are happy that this is a working solution. We still get the real technical detail through the discharge condition on the outline, but yeah, in terms of determining this application, they are happy with that. The foul is picked up by the brown pipes on this. That essentially goes up to the northwest corner of the site to a pumping station. It then comes down that west side, joins the main sewer. You see the dotted line goes along Old Bristol Road, then up, and then there's another pumping station at that elbow right up in the corner. So it is a pump. That's another pumping station there. So it is Wessex Water do have pumps here, and they have not raised a concern about this scheme.
Madam Chairman, could Mr. New make it bigger, please? We've got plenty of room to make it bigger.
Yeah, I would need to. Unfortunately, that's the size of the thing that's gone in there.
No, it's not.
I can zoom in on it if
It's easier on here, but.
yeah, if point of detail come out, I could probably do that. So moving on to, there is the IDB's 9-metre depth maintenance along the Brookville Reen, which is their maintained green. Along the west side, it's down to the individual landowner. I will come to an update on that in a minute. So there's that little foul pumping station in the top corner. There was a concern raised locally that was not accessible, and they provided this tracking drawing to show that the typical Wessex Water vehicle that would need access to this for maintenance purposes can get in and out. So this is the refuge plan, collection points. So the yellow ones would, essentially have their bins on plot, put them out front, and they will be collected. This was a local concern. You can see the tracking on the road. That shows an 11-metre bin lorry getting in and out of the site. And then the blue dots, we have very common on this sort of development, little shared surfaces at the off the adopted highway. The bin lorries don't go in there. And those little blue dots show where the sort of half a dozen or so properties, typically in those little cul-de-sacs, where they will take their bins to. That's very common on sort of modern development, because you're very often the adoptable highway, that's on tarmac and everything. And then these shared surfaces, which are designed to be sort of much quieter places, they very often have block paving on it. They are private, and obviously the heavy lorries going in and out there would probably cause trouble there. So this is the common solution to that, to keep those nice quiet areas, they're not open to through traffic, and the bin lorries would just pick up from those blue dots at the end of those areas. So parking, another area of concern that's been raised. We are bang on parking standards, a little bit over in terms of visitor parking, so we've got 13 rather than 8. All those houses then have the required parking provided on site or in private areas to the county to our standards. And yeah, we have an additional provision of extra visitor spaces. So overall, parking standards here are met. Next layout plan here, just to show the boundary treatment. So typically those blue lines, close bordered fence in the private areas. Across the frontage in purple are those sort of black railings, so country style railings across the frontage. We have some in yellow, the brick screen walls sort of alongside the open spaces in the central area where we would want to see close property fencing. So that's or a brick screen wall. And then we have a little bit of stone at the entrance in the sort of turquoisey blue. Just as that sort of statement bit at the front of the side. So sensitively designed layout, a good range and variety of boundary treatments, including crucially across the frontage there with the estate railings in the pink lines and then a little bit of stone walling. So again, detail of that, I'm suggesting will come with the condition, but we can see what we're expecting. The play areas, there's the little lap in the central area. That's all, with the absolute detail of that comes through discharge of the planning obligations on Section 106 agreement. But yeah, that is what we would expect to see, and open spaces officers are broadly happy with that. And then the other area, which is this sort of with more equipment on it for older children, down in that southeast corner of the site, and with indicatively laid out here. Again, the detail comes through this discharge of obligation. There was an area of concern here that this wouldn't be overlooked enough. This was tucked away in the corner. I don't think I can agree with that. There are existing houses on the south side of Bristol Road. They have, direct sight of it, as obviously within just on 20 metres, just that little row of houses opposite. So from that point of view, I don't think there's any reason to assume that this would be an area of antisocial behaviour or play. No reason to assume that would happen. Landscaping, well landscape scheme throughout. I think we have a central area running through the middle, which will have street trees, landscaped areas, and then the on-plot sort of shrub planting in front of the houses, and then round the north and west of the site, we have sort of additional sort of screening planting to mitigate the visual impact in wider views of the countryside. The issue has been raised down the west side. There is a green. That is not maintained by the IDB. The IDB would normally expect about 6 metres there, but they are flexible on that requirement. And I've got a little update on that particular point, I think this slide and a photo coming in a moment do show that. But they would say 6 metres was what we would normally want. But if they can be shown that can be maintained with the landscaping that's in there, then they wouldn't insist on that. So I'm suggesting that would be an extra condition, that a maintenance plan for that green be submitted as part of the conditions attached to this proposal, just so we can see that that there is 6 metres there. It's just the trouble is it's got a few things planted in it. I think the planting is good, and as long as the maintenance can work around that, I don't see a problem with that. But we can secure that sort of maintenance agreement with a discharge of condition. The north side, the north side, the IDB accept is maintained from the other side, because there's a lot of planting on the north side all the way up to that green. I've got a photo of the west green as well, which was hopefully illustrate my view that it can be managed. But the north side is very clear on the with maintenance from the far side. So then just that landscaping just extends around the site again. We get sort of perimeter planting to mitigate the visual impact. And then moving on to the house types. So we have this main left-hand side of the slide. That is the sort of standard this particular house type facing the road, with the stone detailing on front gable. The right-hand side is just showing where that house is on the corner plot. They would put windows on the side elevation to provide overlooking the public realm. So there's a couple of plots, 5 and 29, that would have with that corner plot that feature on. And then just running through the other house types, this one's used on 5 plots, so for render. So the old one might have black tiles, but the majority here are the brown tiles. And then this one's 2 houses together, and one of the semi-detached ones. But one of a pair of smaller houses, you can see sort of a nice organic form, like they've grown together over time. One little flat over garage in brick in a sort of private area, more of a private area. Then brick version of the house, but with a sort of feature on the side elevation. Again here, sort of with that sort of stone forward facing gable, and different variation of materials, the same intention, the same house. Right, moving on to the photographs of the site, just to sort of give you an impression, this is courtesy of Google Earth 2009. That's what it looked like back then. So basically, after a couple of cows in there at that point. And pretty much unchanged when Google went by in last year, 23. And then this is from earlier this year, that little bin, dog bin, just gives you a rough idea. Right at that, that's where the temporary access goes in. And I've got the next photo. Dog bin is still there. There's that temporary access is in there. There was a concern locally raised that they hadn't secured that very well, allowing potential rat running. They've done their best here. There are, those 3 metal bollards plus the cones. Yeah, someone on a motorbike could get through, but I think you would struggle in a car to get through unless you really didn't care about your car, in which case you're probably not going to care about it full stop. But that is secured. I've not had any, I raised the possibility of rat running with the developer after local concerns were raised. They did, beef it all up, and I've not had any further complaints since then that it is occurring. I do admit that there may be the odd determined motorist who might choose to break the rules. As with everything in life, unfortunately, we can't plan town and country planning on the basis of that fear. So earlier this year, looking up the front, I think prior to the entrance going in, that's just up alongside the A38, so Broxville Green just in there, and then the discharge point for the attenuation point at the far end. And then just looking along again, courtesy earlier this year of Google Earth, or last year with Google Earth, just to give you an idea of the various house types and materials of the existing development on the south side of the road. And then again, earlier this year, so looking all the way along there with Broxville Green now on the right. And then I think this was very recently, when my site visit immediately before committee, see it's all died back a bit in winter. And looking across, that's the adjoining property. And that's the west boundary of the site. You can see there in the trees and the hedges there. And then that's earlier this year, that's the neighbouring property, to give you an idea of that is the closest property. And then looking up along there, the green is in there, in that hedgerow. It is not well accessed at the moment. I don't know who is maintaining. There's no obvious sign of maintenance going on there, but we would look to capture a maintenance regime through a condition if this is approved today. And then that's as it is currently there. This is where the pedestrian access would go in. They've obviously done a bit of work here on site, probably because they've got some preliminary surveying work to be done. But it is this area of hard standing that's gone down. It's relatively small, just enough to park a couple of vehicles in. But I suspect that they've just been carrying out some site survey in advance of construction. And then just panning the camera around, looking all the way across the very far corner of the site, to that building on the neighbouring land, right in the far corner, A38 behind that big hedge. And then prior to those works going in, that was looking back to the east along Old Bristol Road. There looking across at a different time of year. And then essentially the same view there. Just to give you an idea of how it changes for the season. And then just looking back on there, courtesy of Google Earth again, just to show that the site hasn't really changed a lot in a number of years. The number of concerns been raised about Broxville Green in terms of its depth. It is obviously a channel cut into the ground. The areas, the play area for the smallest children is inside the development, well away from that. There is, I think, some local concern that the proposed leaf in the southeast corner of the site is quite close to this. I think it is a feature of Somerset. I didn't feel dangerous walking along there yesterday when I went out on site. Other people were walking their dogs along there. They didn't seem to be unduly perturbed by it. And I didn't feel unsafe walking my children along there at whatever age. There are some things in life that we just learn to deal with. And I think greens are part of life in Somerset, and I don't see any inherent danger any more than that property on the right there experiences with the green opposite it. There's no reason to assume residents of the future development will be any more vulnerable to that green than the existing residents, who I don't think have a problem with their relationship at the moment. And then looking from the back, top north side of the site, straight across the site, properties on south side of Old Bristol Road. And then just sort of panning around, there's the neighbour next door to the house with Brentnall, the house next door, the Gables, then up to Brentnall in the background. And then just coming on to that green on the west boundary, the site on the other side, you can see just in the background of the photograph, they've got sheds quite close to that. It's obviously very overgrown, there's a tree falling down across it. There are, the maintenance for that as is quite difficult, I would suggest. And I didn't see any evidence of recent maintenance there. I think this scheme, by getting a formal maintenance plan as part of it, as part of the proposal, would go quite a long way towards resolving that. And then just looking further up Old Bristol Road, in terms of the house types we see, again, they're mostly render, or pretty much mostly brown tiles. And then just up to the far end there, right at the far end, you can see some more modern houses approved, I think, 2013-14 time. They, introduce, there are more modern house types with grey slate roofs. So not unheard of as a way of variety of materials. And then I think this is my final photograph, just looking back past the site, looking east, again, to give you a feel for the variety of house types we have here. So finally, moving on to those key issues, we are looking at the reserve matters in terms of the layout, appearance, scale, and landscaping. The layouts, we have a gross density, if we include the entire site, of just over 14. If we try and measure just around the cluster of development in the middle of the site, ignoring the landscaped areas around the periphery and the attenuation areas, it comes out at 30. So I don't regard that as unreasonable for this location. We have good provision of public open space on site. We have play areas, and we obviously have some landscape space all around the site. We have parking standards met. So in terms of the layout and the density, I don't regard that as being objectionable in this instance. In terms of the appearance, the design and the detailing, again, I consider those to be acceptable and appropriate to context. That has been adjusted to get rid of some of the materials that were objected to locally. There's a lot of toing and froing between myself, the parish, and the developer as we try to iron out as many of the wrinkles we could. I accept there are probably in local mind a lot still to be resolved, but I think we've gone as far as we can reasonably take this one in terms of insisting upon changes. So from that point of view, those materials, I think we've got a good mix. It's not village core. We're not intending something to ape the character of the historic village centre, but is a new development on the edge of the village. Is it inappropriate? Not in my opinion, in terms of design. In terms of scale, now this ties in with the first bullet point of other matters. Scale, in terms of when you're dealing with reserve matters, is the size of the buildings. It's not the number of buildings, it's the size of them. And those in terms of their footprints, dimensions and height are considered appropriate. The street scene that we saw showed them at a comparable height to the house next door. They are also some distance back behind the green and the maintenance area from other properties on Old Bristol Road. Yes, they are modern houses. They are not of the same scale as a sort of 18th century cottage, but they are set back. They wouldn't be imposing on those existing properties given the separation between them. In terms of the landscaping, we have good, strong perimeter planting and well-planned landscaping within the site. We have the on-block planting at the front of the houses. We have that softening of the green area through the middle with structural planting and street trees, which are a welcome inclusion. And obviously we have the perimeter planting around the edge to mitigate the visual impact of the development in longer views from the north. In terms of other matters, there's a number of things have been raised here. Since the outline application was approved based on I think it was 2018 housing needs assessment, which said 16 are needed. A later one, which I think was last year, was carried out, and that identified a need for 12. 12 would be 40% of 30. However, the case that I have referred to in my report, Harvey and Mendip, that was rejected as an issue that you could raise at reserve matters. In that case, the council had approved up to 6 based on what they thought was the affordable housing need. A local resident challenged that and said, no, the need is up to 5. You shouldn't have approved that. It's too many. You have no justification to do that. That ended up in the courts. And one of the lines that the council sought to defend there was, well, when we get to reserve matters, we can reduce the number if that's what the need says. That was dismissed as a line of defence. And there's a couple of quotes from that in my report, but basically, once you get to reserve matters stage, scale, it's not about the number. The number has been agreed as up to whatever it is as outlined. The only reason to depress the number at this stage would be if the layout was too dense, for example, or they were too close to the neighbours and the number needed to be reduced as a function of layout, appearance, landscaping, or the physical size scale. So at this point, I'm afraid, I think the legal advice is that our hands are tied behind our backs in terms of that overall number. There is no justification to demand that this application be reduced down to 30 to give us 12 affordable units. That much said, the affordable housing officers have advised me that yes, this is giving us what we need here. So from that point of view, yes, we acknowledge the newer housing needs assessment, but it doesn't give us the reason to reject this application because there are too many houses. Drainage issues, the LLFA, the IDB and the Wessex Water have all accepted the proposals here. There is that issue of the maintenance on the west side. The IDB are not saying that that is an outright reason for refusal. If there can be, we can be given confidence that that maintenance will work around that. Given what's going on along that side of the site, I think this will be a betterment to the drainage or the maintenance of that, because clearly things have got away from someone there. It's not being maintained well, and I think we could get that maintenance plan as part of this application. So, whilst I acknowledge the concern about there not being a clear 6 metres because there are some landscaping involved that would interfere with it, I think that can be worked around, and that maintenance, which is down to the individual landowners, not the IDB, that would work. And then in terms of other matters, most of those, if not all of those, were covered by conditions on the outline for all the technical matters, drainage, ecology, etc. So those will all be dealt with through discharge of conditions. So going back to those 4 reserve matters, the layout, the appearance, scale, and landscaping, I think they are all acceptable, and my recommendation is approval, subject to that additional condition to secure the maintenance plan of that western green. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. New. We have a number of speakers on this application, and so I'd like to call Jane Watkins to the table, please. Jane, I understand that you'll be speaking on behalf of Jenny Doyle, who's unable to be here this afternoon. So what we'll do is we'll give you your 3 minutes, and then we'll stop the timer, and then you can start again with Jenny.
In between. Take a breath.
Yes,
Yes.
just let us know when you're ready to start, and we'll set the timer.
Is this mic? Is this on?
We'll
Press the button. Front.
a big button. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Just
everybody.
Just move the microphone slightly.
I think that would be nice, and then I can actually see everyone. It would be splendid.
Yes, as stated, can you hear me? As stated, I'm reading a statement on behalf of Jenny Doyle. And here we go. I would like to draw council members' attention to the letter dated the 16th of February from Watering and Planning to Paul Hickson at Somerset Council, published on the portal. I quote, "To help ensure the receipt of these additional parish council comments did not frustrate the expectation of the application to be considered at the 27th of February Planning Committee, we issued a response to the comments to the case officer on the 7th of February 24. I believe the tone of the overall letter is indicative of how Watering and Planning have conducted themselves towards not only the parish council, but also the residents. The disdain and contempt regarding our concerns, anxieties and distress is echoed throughout this correspondence, and now is developed into a further indication that their contempt towards the case officer and other council representatives. There has been no attempt, and there continues to be no attempt by Walsingham Planning to work collaboratively with residents or the parish council. This is our community, and we believe that Walsingham Planning have failed to fulfil any mitigation commitment or allay any fears that we might have. Furthermore, I wish to place formally again on record that the delivery of the pathway along the north side of Albristol Road continues to infringe on the red line boundary of my property. Despite several notifications, legal documented proof, and countless objections from many other residents, Walsingham Planning continue to state that Somerset Highways are confident that this land is within their control. We know it's not. And we have been provided with no legal explanation or evidence to support Walsingham Planning's position or that of Somerset Highways. But my question is, if Somerset Highways are so confident that the land is within their control, why have they continued to fail to maintain it over these past years? And why have they stated that they will not be permitting refuge and maintenance of the on-site roads when the project is delivered? I would suggest legally that they know they do not own that land, and if the landowner ever became known to them, they, the council, would become subject to legal proceedings because there exists no legal rights in place to build a bridge, road across the ring from Albristol Road to the planning site. Thank you for letting me read that out. Can I grab some water, please?
Yes, of course. But some,
Okay, Jen.
oh, thank you.
Thank you.
You okay?
Yes, thank you. There is no update from the Affordable Housing Manager indicating that he has retracted his objection of 14th of November 23. Who designs a housing development to flood? The exceedance route drawing shows localised flooding will occur in the southeast corner, with the only adopted road flooding to a depth of 65 millimetres. With freak climatic events on the increase and rainfall this February alone to have doubled, this design fails to meet the flood resilience criteria of 1 in a 100-year event plus 45%. The Civil Contingency Officer recommends a condition for a flood warning and evacuation plan for the site. So what then is the flood risk of adjoining property and properties along Broxkill Ring? The surface water discharge rate of 3.85 litres per second is almost double the EA requirement of 2 litres per second per hectare. The issue of on-site flooding and to properties has not been addressed, making it contrary to policy D1 and planning inspectorate condition 21. There is no supporting documentation to show that third parties have agreed to the applicant's private sewer proposal crossing private driveways and grass verges. As the adjoining property owner, at no stage have I been consulted about the proposed private sewer or footpath, both of which cross my drive entrance. The construction management plan makes no reference to stopping construction traffic in Old Bristol Road. The internal road layout assumes there will be no vehicles parked on the estate roads, and the site design has no turning heads for large vehicles. The internal private footpaths are undersized at 1 metre. The Department of Transport document Inclusive Mobility 21 states 1.5 metres as the minimum footpath width. The site design will leave residents moving their waste bins between 20 to 50 metres to the closest collection point, ignoring our objections. The applicant has ignored 2 consulted comments to reposition the leap to a more central location, as passive surveillance is inadequate. There has been no public consultation with Somerset Highways with respect to reopening the Old Bristol Road or footpath proposal for the already narrow Old Bristol Road. There's no access to the pumping station, swale and LVA owned area, and no plan for infrastructure. Importantly, members should be aware that the underpinning technical requirements of this site are not met with this current design. The parish council's expert comment details this in full, explaining how the planning conditions have not been discharged. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The officers will respond to points that each of you raise at the end of the public speaking time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I ask May Cardwell to come to the table, please?
Amen.
You have 3 minutes. Just let us know when you're ready to start and we'll set the timer.
By objecting to this application, we are trying to protect our homes from flooding and responding to Somerset Council's recent statement that residents are responsible for preventing homes from flooding. As a resident of Old Bristol Road, we are extremely concerned about the effect this development will have on our said property, Pilgrim Cottage, as it lies below the surface road and very susceptible to flooding, our 200-year-old home. The road level is at 5.7 AOD and the cottage is below at 5.5 AOD, making it at very high risk of flooding from the rain due to the development's poor design, which fails to take into account the engineering challenge of this site. Their plans for sewerage and water retention do not go far enough and making it a flood risk to our property and several others in the road. Their surface water and drainage strategy includes a pumping station which has not been approved in the flood risk assessment and which Wessex Water advised against using, as pump failure risks the flooding of the site, also affecting Old Bristol Road, and it could have a knock-on effect with the village of East Brent. So we ask committee members to pay special attention to the risk of flooding before it's too late. No one at any time from Walsingham or Edenstone have had communication with the residents on the matter of flooding, and the reserve matters on the planning application have not been addressed at all. The developers will be building on a floodplain which in 2017 rejected which was rejected by Sedgemoor District Council as being unsuitable for building due to the risk of flooding. The design plans show that part of the site will flood, and with no consideration given to the increased risk of flooding to my property and other residents' properties, this development is unreasonable, just on the grounds of increased flood risk to our homes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask Peter Spinner to come to the table, please. And you have
Thank you.
3 minutes, just let us know when you're ready to start.
Ready?
Okay.
This application is turning into another post office situation. And we are the little people. With the continuous lack of honesty and integrity since the first meeting of 18th of August 2020 by Hewlett, De Vries and Parsons, civil servants. At the meeting on the 7th of March 2023 for reserve matters, the public footpath along Old Bristol Road was revised to be relocated on the north side of Old Bristol Road and was put forward by De Vries. No one could query or question the statements made, and similarly to defend the statement of Highways owning the land. Under the schedule of conditions made by the planning inspectorate, Schedule 1 states is approval of details of appearance, landscaping, layout and scale, hereinafter called the reserved matters. Schedule 2, the development hereby permitted, shall be carried out in accordance with the approved plans matters. Approved plans. And the Schedule 2I states proposed footpath plan and sections drawing 4343-500 received on the 3rd of March 2020. This is not a reserved matter. It is statement, and they're wrong. So Schedule 17 states no part of the development hereby permitted shall be occupied until the approved footpath has been constructed. Sedgemoor planning officers were notified of the land ownership and received copies of land registry documents from residents prior to the 18th of August meeting. Hewlett, De Vries, Parsons
Mr.
chose to ignore.
Mr. Spinks, I'm going to
I'm
interrupt
sorry.
you here. Please resist from mentioning names. Officers are here to do their work, and you can continue, but I will not accept any more naming of officers.
I will call them what, planners? And then state the footpath could be built. It cannot. It's now your duty to cancel the footpath approved on the north side of Old Bristol Road on the 7th of March 2023. Failing that, we'll take the contract to the inspectors. Washington Planning have stated if they don't get what they want, they will go to the inspectorate. They don't need to worry. We'll do it for them. Take note, highways do not own any land outside the edges of the curbs or grass verge of Old Bristol Road. Although Edinstone and Washington have written statements saying highways do own the verge. Even
Thank you,
though
Mr.
highways,
Your
can I
time
carry
is up.
on? Just did that stop?
Have you got how much?
Oh, 4 lines. Sorry about that. Highways do not own the verge, even though highways have no legal documents, as opposed to residents' legal ownership, and highways planning officer stating they do not own the grass verge. The usual with the planning officers. They had the last say, or so they thought. Unfortunately for them and Walshingham, we read into many false statements. Thank you very much. Sorry about the wording, but it had to come out.
Mr. Spinks. I'd like to ask Mark Williams to come to the table, please. Oh, 3 minutes when you're ready to start, please.
Good afternoon, councillors. The current access to the site for construction has been deemed illegal by the parish council because at the time of approval and everything, we was not consulted. The parish council wasn't consulted, the residents weren't consulted about a major change to our road. Since then, they have issued Section 130 agreement, and we are yet to hear back from Somerset Highways. The construction mentions using the existing field gate access for preliminary works. I'm worried that the councillors' usage, the contractor's usage, as they have already weakened the bridge. The edges of the bridge are now sitting out where they've had so much weight on it. And they put tarmac all in there. I've got video evidence of it dropping by that much, compacting where the tube goes through the bridge. So, and they have done nothing to repair or make good. The leap is situated in the southeastern area of the site, next to a deep ream. and cars are parked in front of it, obscuring the view from children coming out of the leap. This may cause a serious accident due to either a ball goes over the fence, a kid runs off to try and grab it and ends up in the ring, or into the road, because people can't see them driving up the road. The proposed ridge height of the new houses are approximately 4 meters taller than the south side. When my house was built in the 80s, there was a limitation that we had to match the ridge height of the two properties either side. How comes they can go so high and be towering over us? It doesn't make sense. In the documentation, there's no mention of any access to the field to the east of the development area to allow the field to be farmed, or what is actually happening with this field. We've got no idea. And also access to the attenuation ponds and the pump that would need maintenance.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm not very good at public speaking.
That's all right. That's fine.
I hate it.
Goodbye.
Oh, shut it now.
So I'd like to ask Kevin Gray on behalf of Eastbourne Parish Council to come to the table, please. 3 minutes when you're ready to start.
Okay, afternoon, Chair and Committee. The officer's recommendation appears to have glossed over a few of the leading facts, and I'll go through those one by one. The scheme is only permitted outside of the village boundary for the provision of affordable housing. Despite the officer's comments on affordable housing, the affordable housing manager, and I will mention the name because it's Duncan Harvey, has not given his agreement to the current proposal. A fact which he makes in his email of the 15th of November and the 18th, where he specifically states he cannot accept sign-off of this housing as it does not meet the 2018 HNA. Neither, for that matter, does it meet the 2022 conditions, regardless of the number of properties. A point Mr. Harvey stressed in a meeting that I had with him on the 4th of March last Monday. Until such time as the applicant agrees to provide the required housing as required by the 2018 HNA, then the scheme should be rejected until that's resolved. Police comments by Derek Meredith in his email of the 1st of November. He states in his email that his comments of the 17th of August regarding the LEP have not been addressed, regarding its remote location. It is not overlooked by the existing houses in Old Bristol Road. As the photographs clearly show on there, they sit behind high hedges and fences. Old Bristol Road residents cannot see what's going on in that layout. So it's purely down to the 4 affordable houses that overlook it, and that was insufficient. Item 3, the Lead Flood Authority email of the 25th of October regarding the pumped outfall of surface water drainage and the depth of road flooding, exceedance flooding, to the area outside of the affordable housing on the southeast corner has not been addressed. When you're designing a road layout, you don't exceed requirements of flooding, especially in this day and age where you've got 100% flood design criteria with a 40% freeboard on that. In the last 3 months, we've actually seen parks, sorry, I missed that. The flood levels in Broxpill Reen over the last 3 months have reached an AOD level of 5.6, bearing in mind the road level is at 5.7. So it needs to be looked at. There are lots of other points, 76 points in all that the PC have raised. Also, we need to remember the advent of devolution passed more powers to the devolved PCs, one of which is highways stewardship. And we will be using that to ensure that no works carry out down Alveston Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Final speaker on this application is Nathan Slater Trent, Abortion and Planning. If you'd like to come to the table, please.
Good afternoon, councillors and chair. My name is Nathan Slater Trent, a planning consultant for Walsingham Planning, acting as the agent for the applicant, Edenstone Group, who are the developer of the proposal. This is a reserve matters application in relation to the approved outline for up to 40 dwellings, and the original outline was approved appeal in 2021, and more recently a section 73 application was submitted which varied the approved plans to clarify the means of access and the location of the off-site footpath, and this was approved at committee in 2023. The scope of the reserve matters application presented to you today relates to the outstanding details not covered by the approved outline consents. These primarily relate to layout, appearance, scale, and landscaping. The principle of development and details relating to access, as highlighted in the officer's report, have already been established under the previous consents. Overall, we are supportive of the recommendation to approve and are in general agreement with the assessment of the main issues outlined in the officer's report. Therefore, I'd like to highlight the key benefits of the proposal as we see them. The principal benefit being the provision of much needed affordable housing in the area. The proposal provides a mix of affordable homes, delivering a total of 16, which are predominantly affordable rent. This reflects the need outlined in the most recent local housing needs assessment in 2021. The type and tenure mix of the affordable homes reflects discussions with council officers, resulting in a scheme which is both policy compliant and responds to the operational needs of housing providers. Substantial public open space is provided in accordance with local policy, delivering both a quick play space and general open space throughout the scheme. This not only helps to ensure the proposal retains the sense of openness, but also provides a pleasant environment benefiting both future and existing residents. The open space provided is we consider to be safe and attractive, having been informed by discussion with council officers and third-party consultees. The proposal also includes a significant amount of new native planting, reinforcing existing green infrastructure and providing new green links across the site, helping the council to continue to address the ecological emergency. The design and appearance of the housing has been informed by the comments received on the application and discussions with council officers to deliver a scheme which respects the local vernacular, using materials which respond to the prevailing character of East Brent, while also delivering homes to modern standards. And to conclude, the proposal represents a policy compliance scheme which delivers clear benefits to the local area and has been developed in response to comments received and discussions with officers and consultees. Based on this, I hope you can support the recommendation for approval. Thank you. Do you want me to turn this on?
Please. Yeah. Thank you. There are obviously a number of issues raised there, which the officers could respond to, please. If there are any issues there that relate to a legal civil matter rather than planning matters, can you please make that clear to us as the committee, please? If you'd like to respond, and then we'll work through them all. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just respond to the other surrounding full consents that already exist for the site. So the principle of 40 dwellings, up to 40 dwellings, was established by the Outline Planning Commission. It was originally refused by members at committee. It went to the planning inspector and was granted at appeal. There was an inconsistency on the plans with that application, where the planning inspector actually consented 2 different access points in 2 slightly different locations and cross-referenced 2 slightly different plans. As a result of that, we did have sort of separate full standalone planning applications to actually attach the site to the highway. Again, they've been through committee, members have seen those. It was determined by planning committee. So the access arrangements, pedestrian and vehicular for this site, and the emergency access have all been dealt with by means of full planning permissions that are granted and sit in the background. So those elements have been fully considered, fully debated, and are not subject to consideration for this application. So this application is the approval of reserved matters, details of the 40 dwellings. And obviously Adrian sort of went into a bit about the housing needs assessment because there is reference to a High Court decision in terms of whether the fact that the outline being up to 40 meant it could have been reduced alongside the most up-to-date housing needs assessment. But the legal advice we've had on that is the housing needs assessment that was valid at the time that the outline was granted effectively caps that number. So we would be looking at doing an approval of reserve matters for 40 as established against a housing needs assessment that secured the position of the earlier assessment. So that advice we did query through legal, and that is the response that we've had back. In terms of the detail, there has been some questions about flooding. There was some further information submitted. I believe it was directed to the LLFA and IDB in terms of surface water flooding. But in terms of detail, I'll pass on to Adrian to cover off a few of the detail points. Thank you.
Thank you. Just sort of picking up that drainage issue first of all, the LLFA did provide sort of comments and sort of, frowned a bit at the proposed pump solution. Now, the applicant came back with a very detailed response to that as to why, in this instance, a pump solution would be appropriate. And one of the driving forces for that was to avoid having to raise the ground levels as originally envisaged at the outline stage. We've already had one speaker saying, as they are at the moment, they would, there's a fear that they would tower over other properties on Old Bristol Road. Obviously, if we raise those ground levels by another metre to avoid the pump solution, that would be perceived as even worse. So there is a balance there. That is one of the arguments the applicant put forward to say that's why we're having a pump solution, because it avoids that problem. And the LLFA said, yes, we agree that is a reasonable solution to this particular issue. It's not ideal. They don't like pump solutions generally, but there is a balance to be struck. So from that point of view, I think, it's a reasonable balance to the issues we have to juggle with in a planning decision. A lot of other issues raised, a lot of things sort of relate to outline matters that are sort of dealt with by the outline commission, including consent. So one sort of comment about construction management. That is, through the discharge of condition. The construction management condition that was imposed by the inspector and then subsequently reimposed by us when we dealt with the variation. At that point, when the inspector looked at it, there was no construction access down over there to the east, that one there. So the inspector said it's fine to run the construction up and down Old Bristol Road. Now that was felt to be, I was instrumental in that. I thought that was a bit much from that inspector. And we did encourage the developer to go for, we've got to accept these houses are going to be built. If the permission is granted, the principle's been agreed. We agreed this access here. That, as Dawn said, came to committee, was fully considered. So I think, I'm not quite sure how people didn't know that was on. As I remember, it was quite a full meeting and people were certainly aware that application had been submitted. And I see no advantage to closing this up and saying it's an illegally achieved access. The benefits of this construction access, I think, are manifold. We wouldn't want to lose that. In terms of the other ones, exceedance, the drainage thing, I'm looking desperately for the drawing. Now, what it does show, and apologies, it's not in this presentation, but exceedance, we have an exceedance drawing that shows where surface water, when the pipes in the ground are surcharged because the rainstorm is so great that it's beyond the design of the system, where that would pool up. And this, it does show, there is a plan that shows a couple of areas where on the road it fills up to 65 millimetres, as said. That's a puddle on the road. Now that is something that occurs on lots of roads, that the LLFA is aware of the potential for that, the exceedance, as we're doing that. And Dawn has just shown me there is a construction detail that shows how that would be managed in the curb within the road. Yes, it's factored in, it's known about, it's planned for. and it is not an excessive depth at 55 millimetres. So that is sort of manageable within the puddles you would expect on the road, and that would only occur when we've got, you know, a rainstorm with probably biblical proportions. This is all designed to modern standards to take the water away. Now, I hear the comment about the discharge rates at 3.85 being greater than 2 litre per second 3.85 litres per second being greater than 2 litres per second per hectare. Well, this site is, just remind me of the size of the site. I want to get that just right, but it's at the beginning of my report.
I think, excuse me, if Adrian's just looking for that information, just to be clear for members, so the information we've got in terms of the surface water flooding is there was a response gone back to that basically confirmed Road 2 of the proposed highway is designed effectively with a 55 millimetre high central line, and the gradients of the highway will let the water run into the central line in the middle. So whilst water may exceed into that location, it would discharge into a central channel and be maintained in the central channel in the event of flood risk. So that was the late information that was submitted, I think it was October 2023, that went to the LFA and IDB. So apologies if that detail isn't on the online file, but it was debated with the technical specialists, and the technical specialist was satisfied with that solution. But there is a construction section showing a central channel to that highway, so the surface water is maintained within that central channel.
And just going back to the drainage, the discharge rate, which would be out in the far corner of the site, easternmost bit at the top there. 2 litres per second per hectare, the site is 2.79 hectares, so that's 4 and a bit litres per second, if you add all that up. At 3.85, that is less than the greenfield rate, and that's what a development should look to do. It shouldn't look to minimum. You know, it shouldn't be any more than the greenfield rate, and they should always aim to reduce the greenfield rate. So that water is all going to be collected and moved away from the existing residences on the other side of Old Bristol Road. It all goes north and east and out that way. So I do appreciate the concern that new development going in opposite may cause a flood risk. It is going to be laid out such that the slope takes the water opposite way. And, it's unlikely the water would flow backwards on that system. And, I would sort of point out that, there is that very deep green in between this side and the properties on the other side. And that flows, as I say, anti-clockwise around the site. The water goes away towards the north. So there's no reason to assume that this site, designed to sort of modern standards, very heavily engineered in terms of the design criteria that got into it and the technical details and the volumes of storage. There's no reason to assume that would be likely to flood towards the property in Old Bristol Road, given its design. The existing situation is that I suspect, that water runs off into the Reams either side and goes away as best it can in those within the normal course of maintaining those Reams. But we have the IDB saying they are happy with the arrangements. We have the lead local flood authority saying they are happy with the arrangements. And we have Wessex Water saying they are happy with the arrangements. They also have had this issue explained to them about why a pump solution is necessary. It overcomes other concerns. So from a technical point of view of the drainage, I see nowhere to go with that. I do hear the concerns from the floor. I have no evidence that those concerns justify overriding the advice I have received from my technical advisors. In terms of the affordable housing offer, there are reservations from the affordable housing manager, Mr. Harvey. I also had comments from other, within his team saying it's fine. There is a little bit of disagreement within the team there. The latest comments I had that said it's what is on offer is fine. The houses they're the smaller ones because they're the affordable ones. The need says this is what is needed. So if we just go back to that affordable layout plan, those are the smaller houses. There are a group of them here, open market, shared ownership and rented. One of the issues Mr. Harvey refers to, because there are two affordable housing officers who offered advice on this. You know, the lack of garages on the affordable units is evidence of different design. Well, I don't see that that is the case, really. You know, if we look at the house types, just because, one, two computers, apologies. Here's the house types. I would struggle to say, I mean, they're not marked up as the affordable unit. I would struggle to say which of these are the affordable. One is possibly indicative, but the rest of them, the design is a common theme across all house types. And just because the need is for smaller houses doesn't make them objectionable because they're small. That is what the need is reflected. They also need to be affordable. You start adding big gardens and big garages in, there's an affordability issue. So I think we have to accept that the affordable need is what it is in terms of the sizes. For them to be affordable to the housing associations and the future occupiers, they are of a certain size. However, going back through the designs, I don't see that there is an affordable home house type here. I mean, others may disagree. Yeah. Just in terms of other technical matters, yes, the leak that's there. So if we look there, we have 20 metres from properties, the nearest properties, and we have between 40 and 50 metres from those two existing properties. It's flat and level. If we go to the boundaries treatment, we have that orangey colour, so we have a 1.2 metre hit and miss fence around it, perfectly normal to sort of put around, probably more to keep dogs out rather than children in. But it's not a barrier to surveillance at 1.2 metres. Yes, there will be cars parked in that area opposite. Those are two-storey houses. There will be, yeah, they will see across it. They will probably also be their own children playing there. I think that, yeah, there's no reason to assume that this is an unsafe place. My open spaces officer and the police architectural liaison officer has looked at this again, and they are happy with this arrangement. There is a fundamental problem that this is aimed at bigger children as well. Usually, if you put that sort of thing in the middle of the development, the new residents will object to it because they don't want rowdy children playing. So these things do tend to be on the edge. And, you know, if the houses are turning their backs to them or there are no houses nearby, then we tackle it. In this instance, going back to that drawing, I think that is perfectly reasonable. In fact, 20 metres is the minimum specification distance between houses and these play areas because of the potential for playing children to annoy some people. So from that point of view, I know there were a lot of other issues raised. There's certainly the ownership issue of the footpath that is dealt with at outline stage. I know that is vigorously disputed locally. I can't help that. The highways officers were adamant that at the time, the land necessary to provide that footpath was available to them and in their control. That is a risk for the developer. They can't occupy until they've done that. That is their risk. We had no evidence, the inspector had no evidence to say that was so wrong that that application was unacceptable because the footpath was undeliverable. I appreciate there is disagreement on that point. Finally, in terms of the agents, they have worked very closely with me on this. I have engaged in, felt like email ping pong at one point between myself and the parish council. Comments were coming in, they were going over to the agents. The agents were coming back with very detailed responses to those issues, and then it was repeated several times during the course of the application. The applicant is fully aware of all the issues that the parish council, all 17 something, I think, said. They just disagree on some of them, and we are where we are on that point. I'm sure I've missed something. But
in the course of debate, if you have, we are now going to debate by members. Can I say I'm hearing voices from members of the public. Members have to be free to have a free debate and not be interrupted or impeded in that. If that does happen, I will ask all of you to leave. I'm really sorry, and I know this matters a lot to you. It's really emotive. But we are faced with decision making here and we have to be free to make that. Okay, so with that in mind, I'll ask members for any comments, questions. Is that anyone? Thank you, councillor Bolt.
For Mr. Noon, I should think hopefully within the papers. What's the resilience with regards to this, the land drainage, the pump that's going to be used there? If it's, is there a backup system to it? You know, in flooding episodes in the area, there's likelihood for electric supply to fail. And what is the resilience there?
My understanding is it will be adopted by the water company. And they, in the same as any other pump solution, they have backup details. I don't have those details to hand. But my understanding is that will be picked up between the developer and the water company as part of getting them adopted.
This will be before the first occupancy?
I would need to check the terms of the condition on the outline, but yes, normally those details, we require the details to be submitted early and to be implemented prior to occupation is the normal expectation.
Thank you.
And I've got a question regarding the West Side Green and the possibility of an additional condition being added around maintenance. Who will be maintaining that green? Will that be the IDB?
No, that on the west, that is I forget what the exact term of it is, but it's not one that they maintain. It is one that the landowners either side should be maintaining. There is obviously an issue with access from the opposite side. They've got some buildings awfully close to it. And the whole thing has been allowed to become overgrown. In normal situation, it would be down to those two owners, landowners either side, to deal with the issue. We now have this area around the, we have this area all the way around, which is open landscaped area. That would fall into the management company. We therefore have, in theory, a responsible body that we will know all about. And with that extra condition, we get that specific maintenance regime for that green and how they will work it with the landscaping, which is obviously, we've got a couple of trees, couple of trees in that area. So they would need to work around those, but no reason to assume that couldn't be done.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moon. Any other members? Councillor Bradford.
A couple of questions, Madam Chairman. First one is, has there been a flooding issue on this land in the last 6 months? Because we just had the wettest February on record. Have people been able to walk across this land without wetting boots, or is it
Soggy?
We're very soggy. I didn't wear boots on my site visit yesterday and it was very squelchy underfoot. It's as wet as can be, given this time of year, but not standing water.
Okay, thank you for that. But they've gone through hoops actually to make sure it doesn't flood, haven't they? When you look at pumps installed, I've never been involved in a planning application where pumps have been used. I don't think it's the first time ever. So there must be a lot of risk there regarding all that. The second question is solar panels on the buildings. Any mention of that?
Yes. They are indicated on the house type drawings. If you've got very good eyesight, if you've got very good eyesight, there is little pink dotted areas around on the roof slopes, and that is referred to in the notes, bottom right hand corner, potential area for PV panels, exact position to be dealt with at technical design stage. It will probably come in as function of building control to ensure that the house meets the current standards. But yes, they are indicated on all the houses.
Thank you, Adrian. And that's Dawn de Vries, by the way. Thank you.
Councillor Slocum.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a little bit concerned, and I'm sure Mr. Newton can probably help me, a little bit about the highways issues. They're not maintained the land previously, and there seemed to be a dispute about the land being there. I just wondered, could you expand a little bit, because I didn't quite feel very comfortable with that one.
Yeah, the fundamental dispute over land ownership and highways matters is in relation to that off-site footpath. There seems also to be a question that, in terms of bridging the Reen to get into the site, that may also have land ownership issues underlying it. That's not what we understand from the application or the applicant. They are confident that they have control over all the land necessary to do that. That being the case, it would be an adoptable road from Old Bristol Road and into the site. And the plan, there is a plan, a layout drawing, that one there. Sorry, too far there. So where the vehicles are tracked on there, that is the extent of what will be the public highway. That would all be picked up through, obviously there's a section 278 agreement needed for the works to create the access where it touches up against the public highway. And then within the site, you have the section 38 agreement, which deals with getting the roads constructed to adoptable and then adopted standards.
So if I may.
So that I'm not aware that there's a fundamental issue within the site to prevent adoption.
But if there was, then it would come out when it wouldn't be able to be adopted, is that correct?
There is regressively post-planning a whole network of highways agreements the developer has to negotiate. Sometimes that takes a long time and adoption doesn't happen as quickly as we would hope. Sometimes the parties might walk away from it and say, okay, fine, we just won't have it adopted. The normal thing for the developers is they want their roads adopted. It's better for everyone. There's no reason to assume this won't be adopted. And in any event, those sort of matters will be picked up, subject to the Section 106 agreement in the first instance. At this reserved matters stage, who picks that up is probably not relevant to our discussions today. It will be covered through subsequent highways agreements.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer.
Thank you. Couple of questions if I can. I think on the highway issues that's been raising, I think there will obviously be an ongoing discussion about the ownership of that land, and that's going to be something that others are going to have to sort out, because the inspector, with the decision he made, has put us in that position. So the one query I wanted to ask is, you were just talking about the highways being adoptable, and it was just I was just wanted to double check on page 34 where it's talking about layout. It says the highways officer has not raised any concerns about layout or parking, although notes that the internal state roads and footways will remain in private, including the culvert over the Reen to gain access. So is it the case that will completely remain as a private setup, although we normally ask for it to be to adoptable standard, but it looks like highways are implying that they don't want to take it on?
I think it's not a case they don't want to take it on, it's them flagging up the potential for there to be an ownership issue. It's usually the Reen that causes the problem. Very often the bed of a Reen is it proves to be of unknown ownership. And the banks will be one landowner either side, and then it kind of sometimes is not understood. If that is the case, then the highways officers are very nervous about adopting something where they fear someone might come out of the woodwork and say, actually, that bridge is mine. Now, that's just them. At this stage, it's them safeguarding their position. It's flagging it to the developer to say there is potentially an issue here. If that issue is resolved, then there is no problem to do option.
Yes.
Karen, okay. A couple of other things with again, and then I've got some concerns in terms of this scale and the 40. I understand the legal advice that obviously we've had, and it's difficult to argue if that is the legal case. It just seems strange based on the fact that it is an exception site, and it's only justified as an exception site because of the need for affordable housing. To then allow housing that is greater than the affordable need seems a little odd. And I wonder whether the site that was amended was in the same sort of exception site bracket in terms of letting that through. In the other issues, just wanted to get clarification on, again, the LEAP issue. The viewability, let's put it that way, of that site from across the Old Bristol Road, I think, is limited by the curtilage boundaries of those two properties, Fairview and Cornerview. The distance is right, but there are, I think, think from memory, there is planting that would be between there, not on the side, but on the side of the houses, so they're private areas. So that does leave it really being overlooked only by the affordables with the house, with the cars in between. And it's disappointing that, bearing in mind both the police and our own our own officer who deals with the sort of sports areas highlighted that as an issue that they did want to see moved. So as you can see, there's a lot of planting there that you're not going to see over. Also, just wanted to query in terms of the affordable housing. The comments within the report still seem to suggest that our affordable housing team didn't think the mix of affordable housing was right in terms of the numbers of the size of the properties. And I just wanted clarification as to whether they have now accepted that is right, or whether that is still a concern that they have. I think the officers and the applicants have tried to address a number of the issues, but as I say, at the moment, I'm still waiting to be convinced on a number of other issues as the debate goes on.
Just, yeah, to sort of confirm that Mendip case, it was an exception site. And the only justification was for that was there was a need for affordable housing of a certain number. They approved up to six. The need was up to 5, and they were challenged on that. And the defence that we can argue it down at reserve matters fell flat on its face, unfortunately. I was surprised by that. I thought scale could be used to argue numbers down. I'm grateful to my legal colleagues for pointing out that case, because it is clearly relevant. It's directly comparable to what we're looking at here in terms of the arguments. So yes, I think it's a lesson for the future more than anything else, in that if we are looking at outline applications for affordable housing to meet an identified need, we should maybe be thinking, do we in future in the section 106s say, if there is a later need, you're going to have to deal with that. We would have to find a way of dealing with that. It's probably also a sort of warning as to dealing with outline applications, consequences of. But we are where we are on this one, and yes, I thought it was arguable, but it's not. In terms of that lead, certainly the police architect, the police design advisor flagged it up as this is not overlooked properly, as did our open spaces officer. We've been through that with them in terms of sort of the drawing I showed. There is some views, yes, there is planting immediately on the left here, but other properties are more open in their outlook towards it. It's not that we're expecting the residents to do anything about what is going on in this play area. It's more a case of, if a site is overlooked, you feel you're being overlooked, people are less likely to behave in an antisocial way. That is the theory. There will always be the exception. But in terms of what we expect from a play area, this is reasonable. On other developments, we would be saying, quite possibly be saying, oh, it needs to be at least 20 metres. We might be trying to push it a bit further away than 20 metres. But in this instance, I don't think, it's passive overlooking. We're not expecting anyone to control anything here. And obviously, we're not saying we should be relying on third parties. Chances are it will be the occupiers of the nearest dwellings whose kids are over there. So there is that, you have that extra layer of parental control. And 7 properties, I've just kind there. In terms of the need and type, we have looked at the tenure mix very carefully. The tenure mix does reflect what's in the original housing need assessment. The type, the sizes, the developer gave us all the details. They put it very clearly to us, because there was charitably a hiatus in that dialogue with the affordable housing colleagues. That was shared with them. The mix that we see on the screen there, that was shared with them, and the comment came back said that that's fine. Now, I don't know what I don't want to pull apart my affordable housing colleagues if they are saying different things in different circles. I don't know what happened at that meeting that was referred to. I haven't received any comments from that meeting. The affordable housing what we're looking at today is go back to those reserve matters, layout, appearance, scale, landscaping. The affordable housing is nailed down through the Section 106 agreement. So our affordable housing colleagues will have to sign, agree that through the Section 106 agreement. If they really are saying, no, this does not work, at that stage, they can reject it. And we hear the caveat that there is maybe two voices here. So this is what we're expecting to be the affordable units, these ones. But ultimately, the final say on those will come through the discharge of a planning obligation. It's not our decision today which ones will be the affordable housing. This really is for information only. We can take it off the plans list if in fact it has crept on there. Normally I take them off the plans list because it is controlled through the Section 106 agreement and we don't, as a committee, decide who lives behind which door. That, is the planning obligation. We hear what's being said and that we will note that for when we discharge that planning obligation.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Grimes, Bruce and Murphy. So Councillor Grimes first.
Thank you, Chairman. Question really on the layout. Is there a reason why the affordable houses and the shared ownership are all grouped together in one area? Because in the past on this committee, we've asked for them to be more integrated within the site. And I have to say, I don't like the idea of them being pushed up there into a corner. So I just wondered if this had been talked about and if there's a reason why they've been pushed up there on their own. Thank you.
We unfortunately don't get what was used to be referred to as pepper plotting, whereby these coloured dots would be all over, dotted around, also random, referred to as pepper potting usually. The providers don't like that because their maintenance requirements get more expensive when these things are grouped out. So very often what we in the Section 106 agreement, we will say we want clusters. And generally that's clusters of, depending on the size of the development, on a small development like this, I don't know what it is for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was 12. Clusters of no more than 12, which I think is what they've aimed for here. We have 12, and then over there we have another 4. We then get into a debate of how far apart do they have to be not to be a single cluster. But if this is regarded as unacceptable clustering because it's too big, then that is a thing that will come back to haunt the developer at the discharge of the planning obligation. But we always get them in these clusters because the providers, that's what they want. And increasingly the providers are telling us they need them in bigger clusters because their management regimes are such that the expense of doing it, they're forever pushing us towards larger clusters. So where we got, I think, 16 in one place, I don't think it's fundamentally objectionable, provided the design, the man in the Clapham or whatever on the bus goes past here, but can't sort of look at it and go, well, they're obviously the affordable ones by virtue of the design. And as I said when I went through those drawings, I think the house types, there's big ones, there's small ones, but the design is consistent, whether they're market or not. And in fact, I couldn't tell you which ones are the ones on the drawings, which ones are the affordable. I deliberately didn't mark them up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Noon. My question really for asking that is, in the past, we've actually refused an application because of this sort of thing. Can't quite remember the number, but I think there was the site I'm thinking of was in Wedmore. And we refused it and it was changed to integrate them more in. So thank you for your explanation.
Councillor Grimes, Councillor Bruce.
Yeah, Councillor Grimes stole my thunder there because it's pretty much what I was going to ask. I suppose leading on from that, I would say a cluster of 12 might be acceptable if you've got a bigger development and you've got 2 or 3 clusters. But in this case, we've got 1 cluster on 1 development. And in this case, you are identifying where the affordable houses are because they're all in one place on that development. That's it. It can't be anywhere else. So you stuck them right at the end with the leap right at the end further on, and it's just become almost like a separate development. And I just wondered, in the process of getting to this stage where we are here today to discuss this, has there been an attempt to try and integrate those already? And has there been too much pushback from the developers to do that? And I wonder whether if you move the leap to a more central location and you make those affordable housing units more integrated, does that reduce the overall number of properties that you can put on the site? Is that what we're aiming to? Because that seems like it could be feasible. I'm very disappointed to see that layout with them all clumped together at one end.
Okay, yeah, the affordable has been adjusted. I'm just having a quick look at the earlier version of it, but it's more to do with adjusting the tenure, so the mix of shared ownership and rental units. So it was changed there. In terms of the clustering here, I get the point. They are all together. I think they were always going to be all together. And if they were all together in another part of the site, would we be having the same conversation? Because we always do accept clustering, and clusters on bigger developments go up to 25. So in this instance, we've got 16. I think they're always going to be together because that's what the providers want. They're always going to be of a certain size because that's what the need says it has to be. So it all comes down to design. And, you know, if we split these up into, say, 2 groups of 8, it would require a fundamental redesign. Well, there are some smaller units around in other parts of the site. And so over here, where is it from? There's smaller ones over here. And up at the top, I think they're all stuff up in this area here. So yes, you could ask them to move them around. Is it necessary, though, to make the development acceptable that these be moved around? Is it a defendable reason for refusal to say this layout here is unacceptable given the design of the house? And I think not. I think, given that the design of the house is such that visually it's the same materials, it's the same detailing as the rest of the houses, they just happen to be a bit smaller because that's what the need says you need. I don't know if anyone, Dawn, you've got anything to add to that?
I think I can see where members are coming from in terms of the layout, and it is quite heavy in terms of fronting onto the leap. It is within the cluster. I mean, I think perhaps this plan makes it look slightly more prominent because obviously only the affordable ones are highlighted. There are a number of market housing surrounding it, so they are actually broken up a little bit. The one in the middle is a fog, so it's a flat over a garage. Arguably, in terms of the layout of the site overall, you'd expect a flat to be over a garage in a back courtyard development area. And that's what the requirement was for that size. And as Adrian said, a lot of the affordable housing are smaller units. So there's 6 one-bed flats for affordable rent because that's what the need was. So it's affordable rent, it's 1-bed units. There's 4 2-bed houses for the shared ownership. And there's 4 2-bed houses for affordable rent. And there's 2 3-bed houses for affordable rent. So they are smaller units comparative to what some of the market housing are. That doesn't, in our opinion, make them massively indistinguishable from the main site. But the main site is a looser knit, larger scale property. So we would have said there's a bit of a transition from the bottom hand corner in terms of density, sort of mirroring up. In our view, they have tried to break it up with a couple of market units. If it was a concern that members had, I would be slightly uncomfortable in terms of how defendable that reason might be. So if it were a significant concern for members, I would probably recommend a deferral to allow time for renegotiation on this point if members did have significant concern on this basis. But from officers' perspective, it is smaller units. They have been designed to appear sort of in our mind in keeping with the wider development. I think from this plan, it's very obvious which ones are the affordable because they're highlighted blue and orange. There is a degree of breakup in between what you can see as the clusters. So there are 6 market properties in between all the properties. So in our mind, that was sufficient to space it out and not have it, you know, then they're not in our mind clustered in a tiny corner that's, you know, in a disadvantaged position. Actually, they're fronting onto a nice big open green space with a lot of landscaping and overlooking the Leap. So actually, in terms of amenity, you know, we weren't too concerned about it, but it was a comment that was raised by the Affordable Housing Manager, because obviously we would try and help them further if we could. But Adrian is right, where they are taking on rented units, the affordable housing provider likes the rented units clustered for management and maintenance purposes, but we have spread so far as we can within that parcel, but it is a mix of affordable and market housing in that parcel. So I think it's just, it looks very obvious in terms of the colouring, but there are market.
Thank you. Mr. Newman.
I was just going to also add to that point, if you ignore the orange ones, they are owner occupied, same as the white ones. A shared ownership, slightly different model, that maybe a quarter of it will be owned by someone else, but they're owner occupied. Those are house proud individuals. Look at then what's left by way of the blue properties. I think they're well scattered. If you take out the shared ownership from this picture. So the rented properties are then only the blue one. The rest of them are owner occupied.
We've got a number of councillors to speak. Councillors Murphy, Hendry, Slocum and Grimes. So Councillor Murphy, please.
Chair, it's a simple question. It's clarification. Maybe we are already discussing this. I don't know, but the housing manager was quoted as someone who said that it does not meet HNA regulations, 2018 regulations. For my sake, could you please explain what that means, if that indeed is the case? I think it was put forward by one of the speakers. Does not meet 2018 HNA regulations and should be rejected or, I guess, deferred until resolved. What does that mean?
I can cover this issue if you want, Adrian. Yeah. So originally there was a 2018 housing needs assessment that was in force when the outline planning permission was granted. So that set housing requirement for 16 affordable units. And I believe Adrian's looking at what figures for that requirement was. It was then updated in 2021 and the housing mix changed for 2021 and it reduced. But in 2021, there was a requirement for 5 one-bed rented. There was a requirement for 4 2-bed shared ownership, 2 2-bed rented and 1 3-bed rented. The difference in terms of what's being provided currently is there's 6 1-bed rented, which is 1 additional 1-bed rented relative to the 2021 scheme. There's 4 shared ownership, which is matching the 2021 scheme. There's 4 2-bed affordable rent, which is 2 more than the 2021 scheme. And there's 2 3-bed, which again is 1 more than the 2021 scheme. So there are 4 more affordable units relative to the tenure mix set out in the 2021 scheme, but the tenure mix that's currently proposed matches the most up-to-date needs specified in the 2021 HNA, but is over provision relative to that number. But the legal advice we had was that the over provision is set through the outline. So we are accepting that actually the additional mix, they are providing 1-bed, a 2-bed and a 3-bed additional. So we were satisfied with the mix and it does reflect 2021 HNA, albeit provides more units than the 2021 HNA.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the speakers for taking the time to come and talk to us. I'm not going to speak too much, which I'm sure you'll all be happy about. I could have said a lot of things here, but it's all been covered. It's been dragged over. It's been beaten to death. So there's no point in going through all this on and goes, up and down. Suffice to say, the statutory consultees, I just reading on page 31. The police, the IDB, local flooding authority, Wessex Water, EHO, Somerset Heritage, Highways, Natural Impact, all of them are actually all okay with this, they're on board with this. Therefore, without getting too difficult or too much into detail, I can't actually see a huge problem being okay with this. The affordable homes in a, if you want to call it a cluster, that's absolutely fine. But I think that's acceptable the way it is. The flooding issue seems to be dealt with as well because of the runoff goes to the other side of the rain away from the homes. As I said, I'm not going to say too much about this here because everybody's gone on about it for a couple of hours now. But generally speaking, I'm actually okay with this. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Henry. Councillor Slocum.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we sort of slightly got offline with this. We wouldn't normally know where the affordables are. We wouldn't know where the rented are normally. I think I'm personally, I as a councillor like them clustered. It works better, the community works better, so I like the layout. I think the layout's very good. The one thing I would like to say, and I think everyone's taken a great deal of time today, and I think that's been really good. It's a minor thing, but is there a better bin solution? Because do you know what, trying to walk that far for your bins, 20 metres, it just feels a bit, when, you know, most of us today have the bins very located, very near. This just doesn't seem a very good solution, or am I reading it completely wrong?
It is a compromise in terms of the layout. You know, we would have to design or, you know, the areas, these, let's get the cursor over here, right, so these are, say for example, this area in here, that is intended as a sort of very soft area, probably brick pavers, somewhere where children can, you know, play in the street as they used to, with the on-plot parking, not designed to sort of blacktop adoptable highway standards. The consequence of that, which is a nice design feature, is that the bin men don't drive on it. So you're then looking at down in that middle one, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 properties who'd have to bring their bins to the blue dot. First two are quite close, further one, yeah, 20-ish meters. It's not unusual in the countryside. If you live down a long track, you bring your bins a lot further. And you see bins at the end of tracks all the time. And this is not uncommon on developments in Bridgewater, where you will have this little, they call it shared surface, at the end of the adoptable highway, and bins are brought to there. So from that point of view, it's not objectionable. Anyone moving into any one of these houses would know this from day one. We're not imposing on someone against their will. I do accept that some people might say, I don't want to wheel my bin that far. They may not choose to buy that house. It's not a reason for refusal. It's a matter of sort of personal choice, and there are lots of places in the countryside where you have to take your bin a distance. And I don't think that's symptomatic of a poor in. The alternative would be a very hard design with council highway standard blacktop and curves and everything, which visually I think is a lot more. It's not right for this location.
That explains it. Thank you very much.
And councillor Grant and then councillor Bradford will be the last one, and because you've been on this for about an hour and a half, so I'll be looking for a recommendation after councillor Bradford, but councillor Grant first.
Thank you, Chairman. My question's been answered, so nothing else to comment on.
Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A bit of a jam sandwich, this sector. That's a bit of a position, really, hasn't he? Affordable housing can't quite make their mind up yet, don't sound like it. And we as councillors and officers are stuck in the middle of all of it. Now, really, clarification on affordable housing will be good. So I'm going to propose a deferral on this for one cycle until that's been totally clarified, so we know what we're putting our hands up for. I think that's very important. That's it, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Sorry, I'd like to second the recommendation for deferral, but I'd like to add to that as well. If we can defer so that they can review the position of the lease and see if a more central location with better security can be identified for that.
So, officers, do you need any more clarification on the reason for the proposed water deep?
Apologise, I kind of missed the first one. So was it? Yeah, so was it positioning of the affordable confirmation from the affordable housing team that they're satisfied with the proposal, or a mixture of both?
With affordable housing, don't seem to work the team, we don't know what is coming out of it. You said one half didn't agree with the other half, and we as council are put in that position to try and make the position for them, do we or not? You know, I just, I have experiences before, because affordable housing, you're very positive. When they come in for affordable housing, they want affordable housing, that's it. But at the moment, half do and half don't, and that, and the positioning and everything else that councillor Bruce said, could be well looked at, I think.
So just so we're clear in terms of what we're going back to negotiate with the applicant, in the event we get a supporting comment from affordable housing in terms of the layout as is, are members satisfied, or is the placement of the affordable unit something that they want sort of considered?
Well, included was the reasoning around the positioning of the leap.
Yeah.
Madam Chair. Yeah, I think if they're going to review the layout for the lead, I would also request that they just take a second look at the positioning of them and see if it can be done in a more sympathetic way. Thank you.
So just to check, do we need more clarification from
I'm
Councillor Bradford on?
happy that I know what the recommendation is for the deferral. And I'm happy that the recommendation for the deferral has been seconded. What I would say is it needs to be more than one cycle, because if we are looking at revising the layout, that's going to have to be subject to significant revisions. And then
Everybody's been, I'm quite happy with that, but for as long as it takes, so we've come here with the planning committee, our hand on our heart, and we're doing the right thing. Can't walk out of this room if we're doing wrong.
Councillor Bradford, do you agree to the inclusion of reviewing the positioning of the leaves?
Correct.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Chair. I understand everybody said their respective opinions. I'd like to propose to move the recommendation as is with the affordable exactly as it stands, no change whatsoever, and the local area of play is absolutely fine with me as well. I think as it is, as it stands, is fine. So I recommend move the recommendation as is. Thank you.
Can I just check that with the additional condition around the maintenance plan for the side green?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yes, of course, thank you.
So is there a seconder for that proposal? Thank you, councillor Slocum. So I take the first proposal first, and that is around deferral and around the affordable housing positioning and position of the leap. Is that right? So all those in favour of that proposal, please show.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favour.
Those against, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against.
So that is carried.
13, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's carried.
So a deferral is carried. Thank you, members. I will take a 10-minute break and then we'll move on to the second and final. Okay, members, we're all back. We're ready to start. Councillor Murphy.
There's no public here, so I'm just going to pass this and go home.
I think so. No, we didn't join it.
Physical whipping, yeah. Right. Thank you, members. We'll restart for the final application of the afternoon. So page 49, application for Church Lane, Compton Bishop. And Ms. Elvin, would you like to take us through?
Yes, sure, thank you. So this application has been referred to committee to enable the access and impact on the AONB to be debated. I missed that from my report, so I do apologise. Right, so. Okay, so this is a list of the relevant policies from the local plan in respect of this application. So the application site is located within the parish boundary of Compton Bishop and within the Mendip Hills, AONB, or National Landscape as it's now known. The application site itself lies to the north of an unclassified road with an agricultural field to the east. To the south lies residential properties, with the dwelling that is to be served by this development located to the west. The application seeks consent for the retention of the change of use of the land to domestic and for the proposed erection of a detached garage. So as you can see outlined in blue is the remainder of the property, which the red line area is served. So in respect of the proposed detached garage building, this would propose to be finished with softwood weatherboard cladding and clay roof tiles. The footprint is approximately 6 by 7 metres with a ridge height of approximately 5.6 metres. The finished floor level of the building is proposed to be set approximately half a metre higher than the adjacent road. We now move on to site photos. So this is a view of the site as approached from the west. So where the red car is poking out, the sort of start of the site. And then this is a view from the east. So this is Church Road. And again, just sort of photos again as you approach the site. And then we move on to photos from within the site. So this is stood from within the red line area, looking north towards the hills. As you can see, the land has, had some changes already to make it domestic. So you've got sort of the planting of trees there and other sort of ancillary garden tools and things. So this is sort of stood within the site, looking towards the west. And then this is sort of viewing towards the south, towards the properties opposite. So the application site does lie outside of any development boundary. However, as the change of use relates to the existing dwelling and is of a moderately small scale area of land, it's considered that the principles of the development is compliant with policy CO1. In respect to the visual amenity and landscape, the site does lie within the AONB. The proposed building is considered to be of an appropriate size and scale that is proportionate to the use and finished with traditional materials, and therefore not considered to have a detrimental visual impact on either the protected landscape or the character of the site and street theme. In respect to residential amenity, the proposed building is considered adequately distanced from other properties to not result in a detrimental level of overlooking, overshadowing, or overdominance. Considering highway safety, the site is accessed via an unclassified road, and a condition is proposed to ensure that the surfacing used for the access is compliant with standing advice. So this ensures that there is provision for surface water runoff as to not discharge onto the highway. In respect to parking provision, the site currently has a limited off-road parking area, and the proposal would create additional parking spaces. In terms of the historic environment, South West Heritage have reviewed the application and have raised no objection in respect of archaeological implications. In respect of potential ecological impacts, conditions are proposed to ensure mitigation in the form of an external lighting scheme and biodiversity enhancement measures. Therefore, the officer's recommendation is to approve the planning application with conditions in respect to surface water discharge, external lighting scheme, and a biodiversity enhancement plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Got no speakers, so it's straight to members for debate, please, or recommendation. Oh, Councillor Bolt, Slocum and Hendry and Bradford. And Filmer. All at once.
You say that the land is already being used as a garden, basically. Is there any knowledge of length of time that that's been used?
Not off the top of my head.
No, I didn't know that, after 4 years, if somebody's been built or anything like that, then that part of it wouldn't count, would it?
I mean, just to come in on this, we spent a bit of time going back through some of the aerial photography just to work out how long they've been using it, because the change of use of the land isn't the recent thing. Actually, it appears it's been in place and in situ for at least 5 years, maybe at least a couple of years more. You can see, I think, from the hedgerow along the eastern boundary, that's quite mature, and it really was, if we went through You can see that sort of eastern boundary there, whereas previously there was no boundary at all. This is just the corner of the field. If you go back to aerial photography slightly more. So, I mean, it's not been regularised, so it's been changed. It's been an unlawful change up until now, and they're obviously trying to regularise that as part of the application. But certainly, it's been there in place, and we're not aware of any enforcement related issues that have arisen from it. So I would suggest it's maybe 5 to 7 years, maybe slightly longer, but we couldn't confirm because the aerial photographs on every year. So you sort of go back far enough and then it just disappears. So sort of 2014, I'd say it possibly wasn't some point after that, but the next 4 to 5 years it arrived.
And there's been no complaints, no enforcement, thank you.
Councillor Slocum.
It's just a minor thing. Sorry about this. You said it was wood cladding. Do you know what? The only thing I think about that, I'm absolutely fine about everything. The wood cladding just goes so ropey so quickly. In my area, we've had some garages done with wood cladding, and in no time at all, they've just gone. It looks just so rough and horrible. Is there any alternative, or is that it?
I would say that with the sort of weathering and sort of the silvering of the timber cladding, that's appropriate for this location because it is rural and it's a protected landscape, so it would help blend in. I appreciate what you're saying though.
It just goes mouldy and horrible, you know. Sorry. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. This is as simple and straightforward could be. Simple as that. It's not causing anybody any problem, doesn't impede on any other property, it's not out of the way, it's not too high, it's not too big, it's nothing. So on that basis, I recommend, also move.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Well, I think Councillor Martin beat you to.
Oh, I'm
that.
so sorry. Everybody beats me now.
Do Councillor Bradford and then Councillor Filmer.
See no harm in it, Mr. Chairman. No harm in it.
Councillor Filmer.
Just the one question, if I could. Do we have anything that shows the elevations in relation to where the new build goes in relation to the stone cottages?
So we just have the block plan, which is down here. Move my mouse. There we go. So it will be going about here.
I think from the parish council comments, I think that was one of their concerns. It was just that it's being placed right at the front of the site, where it's set back a little bit within it. It would have had no impact whatsoever, and it was just, again, when you show the photographs, as you come down, you've got the stone cottages. You'll then have a block in front of you to come down that road. It's not enough to say no by any means, but I think the concern they raised was just it could have been done in a less impactful area, way in that particular area, which is, as you can see, incredibly rural. So I think that's where their concern came and why it wasn't totally as straightforward as might have been put by some of my colleagues. But happy to go along with what's been said.
I would just add to that, you know, that was something I was also concerned about and did negotiate with the applicant. We did look at potentially other options, but due to, I think it was a septic tank and some drainage pipes, also the fact that they had planted some trees which have started to establish, it was considered that there was no other option within the site.
Thank you.
Oh, that's useful to know, isn't it? Thank you. So we've got a proposer and a seconder to support the officer's recommendation to grant permission. All in favour, please show. And that is unanimous. Thank you, everybody. So that brings us to the end of the applications. Just one other agenda item, and that's planning appeals decided. Please, do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, that's the thing. So we've got sort of two decisions for you. So we refused a lawful development certificate for the use of a storage yard for business purposes. It was subject to appeal land at south of Parchy View, Ward Lane, Chedzoy. The appeal was dismissed. So they supported our recommendation on that. Secondly, there was erection of a fence wrapping around a western, northern and eastern boundary with an access gate, replacing existing fencing at Bristol Road, Rooksbridge, which again we refused planning permission, was subject to appeal, and the appeal was dismissed. So two quite good decisions for us.
Excellent, thank you. If there's no debate around that, oh, councillor Filmer.
Can I possibly raise a question? I don't know whether it's now or at the end. It's not relating to these, but it is relating to planning and enforcement.
Well, I think this is the end of the meeting, so I will thank members for comments and declare the meeting closed. And now you can ask.